Hello, everybody. Welcome to your favorite Bronze Age Spider-Man podcast. Here comes the Spider-Cast. I am your co-host, Mike L., and as always, I'm joined by
Joshua Mervell. And today we've got a very special episode planned. We're going to be talking about two of the Marvel Treasury Edition Spider-Man comics. So this will be really fun. We're going to start off with Marvel Treasury Edition number 25 with Spider-Man versus the Hulk at the Winter Olympics. And then after that, we're going to jump to Treasury Edition number 28 with Superman and Spider-Man.
That's right. And in case anyone's wondering why we're skipping the numbers in between, some of them don't have Spider-Man, and also some of them are reprints. So these are two of the Marvel Treasury Editions that have original stories in them, okay? Mm-hmm. So yeah, like you said, we're going to start with number 25, which is Spider-Man versus the Hulk at the Winter Olympics. Before we get into the interiors, let's just talk about the cover first of all.
Right.
I actually really like this cover. It's by Bill's. The cover's by Al Milgrom and Jack Abel.
Okay.
It's got the Hulk fighting Spider-Man in front of like a crowd of people on a mountain, like a ski slope or whatever. What do you think of this cover?
Yeah, it's pretty good. There's some dynamic poses. There's a lot of action going on. There's some cool foreshortening with the Hulk. He's kind of ripped off this ski lift pole. And it's this huge pole, and he's swinging it at Spider-Man. There's like skis flying around and, kind of everywhere. Spider-Man is dodging this thing that Hulk is swinging at him. It's pretty fun.
It's actually surprisingly good. I mean, Al Milgrom gets a lot of flack from readers, but this is actually pretty good. Like you said, like the swing of the whatever that is, like the thing of a bob that Hulk is holding is really well done with the ski in the foreground and the way Spider-Man's jumping. It's nice. I really like it. Then on the back, we've got an image that sort of looks like it's connected, but not really. And it's the Mole Man coming out of the ground. And it's drawn by Bill Sienkiewicz and inked by Bruce Patterson. Also, another good shot. I actually prefer the cover, though. I think the cover's better than the back cover. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so, too.
Yeah. So anyway, this is definitely a strange story. So obviously written to tie in with the 1980 Winter Olympics. I guess my impression of this comic is, when you're watching like a TV show, like whatever it may be, Seinfeld, The Brady Bunch, and they do an episode where they go on a trip to Hawaii, or they go on a trip to LA, and it doesn't quite feel right, and it's not as good as the regular series, but maybe they had a little bit extra money, so they go on this trip and they show them doing all these crazy things, and they also throw in some guest stars, right?
Yeah, or they have like a Disney World episode where the whole gang goes on a vacation to Disney.
Right. Yeah. And so overall, this was a really long story.
Yeah.
And it was, to be honest, it was a struggle to get through. What did you think?
Yeah, it felt really drawn out. I don't think it would have been as bad if it was just a little bit shorter. Like there just seems to be a lot of fluff for no reason.
Right.
It's kind of an interesting idea, but again, I don't think it was just fleshed out enough, and there's a lot of just kind of junk thrown in to get to that like 60-page count, I think it is.
Oh boy, this is actually a 62-page story.
Yeah. Woof. That's a long one.
That's about 3 times as long as a typical comic of the day. So yeah, we're not going to go as in-depth we're not going to go panel by panel, but we'll do our best here. So,
right.
Oh boy, I'll do my best and you help out if I falter here. But basically, we've got this openings. We've got like a nice little introductory splash page that's kind of like a pre-splash page of Spider-Man and the Hulk.
Right.
It's kind of like almost like a second cover. It's kind of cool. But then when we cut into the action, we see Spider-Man swinging on top of this ski slope, and he's encountering this group of, I guess they're villains, called Digger, Boulder, Landslide, and someone else. Who's the woman?
Yeah, she's some sort of witch, I think. I can't remember her name either.
Yeah, but it's like Chapter 1, The Outcast. And we should also point out this is written by Bill Mantlo, Mark Grenwald, Stephen Grant. Bill Mantlo we know from Spectacular. Mark Grenwald we know from Marvel 2-in-1. Stephen Grant was actually the writer who was doing Marvel Team Up when we first started the podcast. And sorry, they did the plot, and then the actual script was done by Bill Mantlo.
Bill
And then the
Mantlo.
artist is our buddy Herb Trimpe from Marvel Team Up.
Right.
You remember him, right?
Oh, I remember him.
Yeah. And inks are by Bruce Patterson, who I'm not overly familiar with, but the inks look pretty good on this.
Right.
But basically, sorry, go ahead.
Surprisingly, I enjoyed the art by Herb Trimpe.
Right.
It was really good. It didn't feel as rushed as a lot of the Marvel team ups have been. It feels a little bit more fleshed out, and maybe it's because he had more time with this one because it's a longer issue. So maybe it was, I don't know, he had more time and didn't feel as rushed. Maybe that's also why Marvel Team Up has felt so kind of out there, because they were kind of rushed along. Well, this was, I don't know what time, I guess comparatively this was written. Do you know?
Well, this
what
was
year?
This was published in '80, so this was a couple years before the issues we're reading right now.
Right.
So it could have been that, but I also think it could have just been the inks are by. This is by Bruce Patterson. Like I said, Mike Esposito is a great inker. He just maybe isn't suited for Herb Trimpe. That could just be it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, basically, so we start off with Spider-Man just fighting these bad guys. There's not really much going on here other than fisticuffs.
Right.
And they kind of just hint at something that's going on. They disappear, and Spider-Man, they basically leave Spider-Man trapped in ice. And then we...
also they kidnap one of the athletes, right? Maria
That's actually,
Karzoff.
Right, and to be honest, I didn't do any research. I don't know if she's a real person or not. I don't know if you know, but
No, I don't know.
but this is obviously probably a callback to what happened in Munich when the real story of, I don't know how many, I think it was 11 Israeli athletes were kidnapped. And they were actually murdered, but this story does not go that far,
No.
thankfully.
We see her get like cast in diamond almost, like this big giant gem freezes her, and then she sinks into the ground. And Spider-Man isn't able to stop it. Like he's trying his hardest, but it kind of slips through his grasp, and she's gone. After that, the lights turn on in the stadium, and the bad guys kind of scurry away.
Yeah.
And then when the police show up, Spider-Man leaves, and Peter Parker returns. He's there for the Olympics to take photographs, and he starts talking to one of the skiers. And they believe, like Spider-Man believes that he might be the next target, and so does the press. So they're asking him a bunch of questions, and they kind of go through the fact that a bunch of other athletes have already been captured. Maria was not the first one. So we see that Claude Lebron, a French bobsledder, has been kidnapped. Bobby Kyle, Canadian hockey champ. It's so weird. I think that they call him something else later on, the Canadian hockey champ, now that I'm thinking about it.
Do they really? I didn't notice that.
Maybe I'm mistaken. I thought his name was Bobby Lyle. Anyways, and then and then after that, Maria was taken. So yeah, they're kind of talking to him about that, and we cut to chapter 2, Fire on Frozen Snow, and we start off with this really large panel at the top of the page, this is actually like a double page. Page 12 and 13 are this like two splash pages connected, so it's like one huge splash page. Is there a word for that?
Double splash page.
Double splash? Okay.
Yeah. It's funny because it's actually a sequence where the background is the same, but the Hulk is actually in 4 different panels, right? He's leaping over the tops of these mountain peaks.
Right.
Yeah, he's hitting the mountain peaks and leaping, and then when he gets to the 4th panel, he gets encased in diamond, just like the girl earlier.
You know what? I honestly didn't even notice that.
Really?
Yeah, I just assumed that it was like some kind of like light beams, like the other one, because the gem, the light beams that are coming off the gem are also in the 3rd panel, like they're in the 4th and 3rd panel.
Right, gotcha.
So I didn't even really click that, but now that you say that, yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
That's kind of a cool way to do it. Yeah. So yeah, we see Hulk jumping from mountain to mountain, and then on the last panel, on this huge page, we see him being encased in this gem, the same kind of gem that Maria was taken in, and he starts sinking into the ground. And these like lava monsters are kind of making fun of Hulk, and that makes him angrier and angrier, and he bursts out of the gem. So we get a little battle between them, and the Hulk is throwing a bunch of snow at them, which is their weakness because they're lava monsters. And they're throwing like lava catapults at him, and he's coming over and destroying them, and it's kind of this big mindless fight that doesn't really add anything to the story, but it's pretty fun. They run away, and Hulk runs into this cave where he is introduced to Queen Kala, monarch of all Subterranea.
Yes. I got to point out, I do like her design. I like how she's drawn. I like her costume. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, she kind of has this like samurai almost looking helmet.
Right.
With these like big flares kind of coming off of them, and these cool yellow robes, and yeah, she's got a pretty interesting design, especially since they're introducing her as like this ancient queen. That's kind of coming up. We learn later on that her motives are that she wants to stay young. And after she came back to the surface of Subterranea, she started aging extremely fast. So she's been trying to find the Fountain of Youth.
Right. Which is what Tyrannus... But yeah, it's his name. Tyrannus' motivation has always been that he's after the Fountain of Youth. Right. Or he has the Fountain of Youth. I can't remember. Mm-hmm. But anyway, yeah, so then we cut to Chapter 3. So what's going on here in Chapter 3?
So we see the skier, I believe... no, he was not... I can't remember his name. But he's competing, and he breaks the world record and gets first place, and then... another skier comes and ties him exactly for the
of course
first place gold, so they have to do a rematch. And on that rematch, he lifts off, and then all of a sudden he's encased in this gem as well,
right?
And sinks into the ground and disappears. So Peter Parker dons the Spider-Man costume and tries to do some detective work, where he meets up with those goons from earlier on, and he's knocked out and kidnapped. We are revealed that these guys are working for the Mole Man.
That's right. From Fantastic Four #1, right?
Right. So he reveals that a long time ago he tried to introduce himself to Kala, and she wasn't interested in him, and he kind of fell in love with her. So he has the Fountain of Youth now that she is interested in, and he's keeping it away from her, kind of in vain. So he kind of reveals his plan that he wants to stop her, I guess, from using the Fountain of Youth, and he wants Spider-Man to fight for him, and he's kind of blackmailing Spider-Man and threatening him, saying that if he doesn't fight for the Mole Man, he's going to use this machine that will create earthquakes and kill a bunch of people at the Olympics.
Right.
So Spider-Man is kind of forced to fight for the Mole Man.
Mm-hmm. And Mole Man's also using, what are they called? Outcasts?
Right.
They're people from the surface that are sort of these odd-looking people with weird powers, like various different powers that he's using them. He's using on his team to fight the Lava Men, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So after that, we get this kind of cool-looking battle sequence almost with the Outcasts and the Mole Men versus the lava monsters, and they're kind of on two separate sides of this huge canyon underground, and they're like chucking boulders and like lava balls at each other, and there's like firing going back and forth. It's pretty. There's some pretty cool stuff in here.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool page. Like Herb Trimpe, he's kind of influenced by Kirby and Jim Steranko, and you can see it here. It's a really nice page.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then just two pages later, we get another nice full splash page, right, of the Hulk.
Oh yeah,
kind of like eating dinner, drinking from like a whatever it's called,
a huge bowl or something.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the Queen's back there, Queen Kala. I don't know. It's a pretty cool page. Yeah, there is some nice art in here for sure.
Right, and I guess it's implied that she's been drugging the Hulk with like the food and drink. That way, she can kind of tame him and trick him into fighting for her.
Right.
Yeah, after that, we see her actually use this ray gun to zap the life away from the
athlete, right?
Right.
And turn her into an old woman.
Right. So she kind of like goes all old and wrinkly inside of the gem.
Right.
And she's going to use her as kind of like leverage. And like a backup plan in case anything goes wrong for her evil plan. So she then convinces the other athletes, like, listen, if you don't fight for me, then she's going to die and not be able to use the Fountain of Youth. So they're kind of forced to fight for her. So she gives them these kind of goofy, like, super weapons that have to do with their sport that they... that they're doing in the Olympics. So
ridiculous.
Brad gets these rocket skis and power poles capable of incinerating an enemy. His response is cute. It's great. It's kind of some sarcasm. Like you see them kind of like using these weapons and testing them out, but they're like not happy about it. I really loved that line. I think it's I was like genuinely, I don't know why. I think it's because you could tell that he's just not impressed, and it's such a simple, like, short thing to say, and you get everything you need from that one character.
Right.
Maria gets these super skates. They're razor sharp and good for slashing. And then Claude LeBron gets the bomb sled armed with fiery flame cannons. And then Bobby, they call him Bobby Lyle here, not Bobby Kyle.
Okay, you're right. That must be, well, one of them's a mistake. I'm assuming Bobby Kyle's the right one. I don't know, though.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, he gets his weapon, and he of course gets, let me guess, a super stick that fires power pucks. Yes, the most advanced weapon known to subterranean science.
I love it.
So great.
Oh, this is great. You're right. Yeah,
and then we get this nice page with these big like equally sized rectangular panels, and we it's pretty cool. We get to see them actually using the weapons, and there's some pretty interesting things going on.
Yeah, like this is, let's be clear, this is insane, but it is fun.
Right. Yeah, it's completely goofy. Like it's kind of like that mustache twirling villain motive.
Right.
Like she's completely doing it for vanity. Like she just wants to be beautiful again, and she's like giving super weapons to athletes to fight for her. Like it's a ridiculous but fun.
Right. Exactly.
So then we get this interaction with her and Mole Man, and they decide that they're going to kind of do this wager where they're going to use the Olympic Stadium to have their separate teams fight each other and see whoever wins will get the Fountain of Youth. And they take the entire Olympic Stadium, and Mole Man lifts it off the ground on these giant poles that jut out. It's so like super evil plan. It's great.
Yes, and let's be clear, like I love Herb Trimpe, but this shot of the entire, Olympic grounds coming out of the ground, it looks like a toy.
Yeah, it really does.
It's so hard to accurately draw that, but it looks ridiculous. But whatever, I can suspend my disbelief.
Right, I think it's because it's cool.
Right,
it's fun. Like, I don't know. So yeah, they introduced the bobsled team versus the Mole Man's group of what were they called again?
Well, there's the Outcast.
The Outcast, right?
Yeah.
So it's gonna be the Outcast versus the athletes with the super weapons, and then she introduces the fact that she has the Hulk fighting for her, and Mole Man knew that this was going to happen, so he brings out his secret weapon, Spider-Man.
Right.
And then this huge battle starts happening on Chapter 4, the Contest of Champions.
Yeah, where have we heard that before? Eh?
Yeah, really. I think maybe last issue, I think I had mentioned the fact that the Contest of Champions was kind of connected to the Olympics issue, and I think maybe this is where I'm getting it from.
Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, because we did Contest of Champions on Quasar Chronology, and I think there was a connection there. Like it was originally written for that, wasn't it?
Right, I think so.
Right.
Yeah. But it didn't have anything to do with the Olympics, and then there was this huge delay on it, I believe.
Right.
So
and
then they
finally
released
it.
Right.
As the miniseries.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if this has anything to do with it too, because again, it's called the Contest of Champions, so it might be just a nod to it, even.
Yeah, could be.
But yeah, it really kind of just turns into this big fight for a little while. There's some pretty cool stuff, like Hulk has this armor on, and it's making him slow, so he busts out of it, and we see the super athletes using their like sporting equipment to fight, and the lava monsters are throwing like coal rocks, and the hockey players are like blasting them with the hockey sticks, and yeah, there's some pretty fun stuff.
Yeah, again, I guess it's kind of the absurdity of how you shoehorn in Olympic athletes into like a superhero story, right? But it still is fun though.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of just fighting.
Right.
Not much actual story, and then eventually, I don't even know how the story ends. Like the Hulk smashes the ground, and then the entire. Let's be clear here. This must be. Like, this is the size of a mountain plus all the surrounding area that's on these giant pillars. And then it all just sinks back into the ground, right?
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. The Hulk ends up snapping out of the mind control because Mara is... Mara or Marla, whatever the queen's name is. Kala, sorry. She gets distracted because the one athlete she drained of life has accidentally splashed into the Fountain of Youth. And when she did that, she drained all of the water so it can't be used anymore. So the Hulk has the opportunity to smash and destroy the box that they're using to view this Contest of Champions. And she grows old and wrinkly and kind of ages rapidly, and there's no way for her to go back because the Fountain of Youth is destroyed. But the Mole Man says that I'll still love you no matter what, kind of thing. Where you'll be ruling as my queen, there is no light, so I won't be able to see your face. It doesn't really matter what you look like to me.
Yeah.
So they kind of just leave, and then the Hulk, again, like you were saying, smashes the Olympic Stadium back to the ground, and
with one punch.
With one big punch, and the athletes are fine and ready to start competing again in the Olympics, and Spider-Man swings off, and it ends.
And then, of course, he gives a little soliloquy. That's what makes a true champion, Brad. Not winning or losing, but understanding the true importance of the contest. Remember that, and you'll always be a champion, whether they give you a gold medal for it or not. The end. And then, of course, if you flip to the last page, it's actually an advertisement. It says, coming this summer, Marvel superheroes at the Summer Olympics. That must be what was originally Contest of the Champions. Right?
Okay.
Or Contest of Champions, yeah. So I'm never reading that again.
Yeah. No, it was there was some interesting stuff. I will say I was entertained reading it, but it was just fluff. Like, there's really no substance to the story, and it's just kind of a gimmick. Right? Like, it's...
Right. Like you said. Yeah, like just shoehorning in the Olympics into the story.
Right. It's like fast food comics. Like, it's fun, and like you kind of enjoy it while reading, but it's fast food, like, you know, junk food. Like, you're gonna have fun reading it, but there's not really much substance there.
Right. It's kind of like it's like when you go see like at least back in the 80s, there'd be like the blockbuster movie, and then there'd be the fast food tie-in where you'd get like a toy,
Exactly.
or like a Happy Meal, and that's what this is. This is the Happy Meal of Spider-Man and Hulk,
Yeah.
right? So, not a great story.
No.
But our second and final pick for today is also, as far as I know, the last Marvel Treasury Edition ever published. And this
Yeah.
this is the second time Spider-Man and Superman team up. Far less famous than the first time. Have you ever read the first team up between Superman and Spider-Man?
No, I don't think I have.
Really?
No.
It's pretty good. It's pretty classic, but some people think this one's actually better. I actually quite enjoyed this story.
Yeah. It was a lot more interesting than I thought it was going to be.
Right. And the thing is I'm almost never excited by team ups between like different companies, but this one I thought they did it right. Like it's just a very casual, like the way that they kind of reference, like, oh, well, you know what, now we're gonna go to Metropolis and do this. They don't make a big deal about it, the fact that they have to cross dimensions to meet each other. This is just a pretend continuity where Superman and Spider-Man exist in the same, right? And they just casually go over there. I just think that's pretty cool. That's one thing that makes it work.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. Like, I think that the great thing about it is they don't write a reason why these two universes are connected. It's just kind of like this alternate comics world where Metropolis and New York are in the same place.
Right,
right. Are both on Earth, and they just kind of don't acknowledge the fact that it's two separate things, and they can kind of hang out with each other. But
absolutely.
So the gist of this one is Doctor Doom has this evil plan, and Peter Parker goes to Metropolis to do some digging around and seeing what he can do, and Superman, Clark Kent, decides to go to New York. And it's almost like Spider-Man and Superman switch lives for an issue, where Superman kind of goes and hangs out with J. Jonah Jameson and the Daily Bugle, and Peter Parker goes to Metropolis and works there, and, you know, meets Superman's friends, and it's really fun because I think that you kind of get the sense that Spider-Man is the one that's cursed. It's not his surroundings. Like, his bad luck is just him. It's not, you know, his life or what's going on, because it kind of follows him over, and he's unlucky in Metropolis. And then when Clark Kent comes to almost take over Peter Parker's life, he is still the same Clark Kent Superman, and everything kind of goes right for him, and he's charming and well liked. So, you know, he's even able to charm J. Jonah Jameson and get him happy and work well with him. Like, it's really funny, I think, and a clever way to do it.
Yeah, and like I'm just gonna go through the story quickly.
Yeah.
First, so it's written by Jim Shooter, who at the time was editor-in-chief of Marvel, and who has a long history of writing for both DC and Marvel. He also famously wrote Secret Wars 1 and 2, which a lot of people didn't like. But, you know, if you're gonna have someone that's able to write all of the characters, he definitely is one of the ones that I think can do a decent job.
Right.
It was penciled by John Buscema, who's absolutely one of my favorite artists.
Yeah, he's
I don't think
great.
we've ever talked about him. Yeah, but
we definitely have.
Okay, we have. Okay, good, because not all of the pages are great and not all the panels are great, but there is some great moments in here that we're going to get to. There are some great moments. The inks are by Joe Sinnott, who's most famous for doing Jack Kirby on Fantastic Four. And then the backgrounds are inked by a bunch of different people: Terry Austin, Klaus Janson, Bob McLeod, Al Milgram, Steve Leola, or Leah Loha, Walt Simonson, Bob Layton, and Joe Rubenstein, and Bob Wyasek. But anyway, so I'm just going to quickly talk about, so we first start off with Spider-Man intervening on what appears to be the scene of a crime. There's a bunch of construction workers at a construction site, but it's in the middle of the night. And of course, they're armed with expensive laser pop guns, as one of the guys calls them, right? So Spider-Man gets into a fight with them. They're shooting him at him. And meanwhile, he's also taking photos. And then basically, He rounds them up. The cops come, and just like in the other one we read, and just like in most Spider-Man stories, the cops want to question him, but he just ends up taking off. Okay?
Right.
Which is an old trope of Spider-Man stories. Then we cut to Doctor Doom, who's kind of watching from his headquarters in Latveria, and he's kind of narrating his latest plan for world domination.
Right.
And it's kind of cool because we get like I think more of a glimpse into his mindset than we usually do, and like we show him going to a mirror, and he's like looking in the mirror, and he takes off his mask, which is pretty rare in those days. And we see the top of his bald head, and he's like, "Once happiness seemed so much closer, so easily within my grasp. For a darkly handsome gypsy youth, a genius, a dabbler in sorcery, it seemed all roads led to success, to fulfillment, even love. Then came the accident which ruined my face and my life in one single searing instant." I don't know. It's pretty cool.
It's really great.
This? Yeah.
I also love, like, beforehand, he's kind of monologuing and talking to himself, like, out loud. It's not; these aren't thought bubbles. Like, he's talking to himself, and then as he walks away, his butler, "Master, how may I serve?" And then Dr. Doom interrupts and says, "Go and double check my personal tapes. Make certain that they make certain that they take my every utterance is being recorded as usual, and have a transcript of this evening's tapes brought to my throne room. I'll want to read it later. I believe my last soliloquy to be particularly inspirational." It's so great. Like, he's so like cocky and sure of himself that he's monologuing for himself.
Yeah,
it's
great. I know. Yeah,
it's so
he's
good.
taking inspiration from himself.
Yeah.
He's very impressed with himself. Yeah. This is great. Like, again, this is a rare chance that Jim Shooter got to write Dr. Doom, and he does a bang up job, I think, So then and this is something I didn't expect, but this is not just a Superman Spider-Man story. They introduced the Hulk early on.
Right.
And so we see Dr. Doom talking about the Hulk. We'll get back to him later. But then we cut over, and this is great because it's very rare that we get to see John Buscema drawing Spider-Man. So one of the things I want to point out on digital page 8, one of the things John Buscema is a master of is every panel is like a full scene.
Yeah.
So in the first panel, we see him waking up. Then the next panel, he's walking out the door. He's got his jacket half on. We see breakfast half eaten on the table. He's drinking his milk. There's dishes in the sink that are completely filled up. The garbage is overflowing, and we just see with that one picture. Like, we don't even have to know. We don't have to read what's going on. We know he's late. For whatever he's doing, he's late, right? And it just shows how disheveled and disorganized his life is. I just love it,
It's great.
Then we cut to the next shot. He's in high school. He's at college. He's hitting on this girl. Then the next panel, we see her walking away smirking, and he's kind of got that look on his face. So again, without even reading the dialogue, we know that he's completely struck out with her, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just so freaking well done. I love this art. And then we cut over to him, flashing back to a little bit of Aunt May. Then we see him in the Daily Bugle with Joe Robertson and J. Jonah Jameson. And it's just, again, the typical J. Jonah Jameson's throwing, rejecting his pictures. They're garbage. Spider-Man is old news in this town.
Right.
Then we see him pointing, again, visually, we know what's going on. He's pointing to a picture of Superman. Superman is where it's at now, right? And so he sends him on this mission. And he's like, does he send him to take pictures of Superman here? You're washed up around here unless you start snapping something newsworthy. For instance, the wire services are saying that the Hulk's been sighted, headed towards Metropolis. So now that's where we get the introduction. Like, we established that this is now a different continuity where New York and Metropolis coexist. And it's great, Yeah.
And the storytelling continues even afterwards, because we see the first panel on page... Oh, what is this? Page 8? Original page 8, so digital 9. We see the helicopter flying over the city. It's like flying over a chapel. Then we cut to the news anchors in the helicopter recording everything. And then after that, it's this huge wreckage. And like that panel with like the train destroyed and like buildings on fire and completely crumbled. There's a truck that's like wrapped around a building. There's so much detail. There's a car like literally through the roof of like this, what is it, like a saloon or bank or something like that. Like it's really really detailed, and it really tells a story. And then after that, you can see kind of the mayhem and the chaos that's going on. There's this little girl like screaming in the foreground, and the firefighters are trying to put out this fire, and then we get a close-up of Superman. It's just really well done. Every single panel is its own story.
And this is also, I don't know if we mentioned this, but this is the destruction. This is the destructive path of the Hulk.
Right.
That's what they're looking at.
And Doctor Doom has been kind of making the Hulk follow this destructive path to Metropolis.
Right. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
And so then we touch base with Jimmy Olsen, and they get back to the newsroom. And basically, at this point in Superman continuity, Superman was working, or the Daily Planet had been bought out by GBS, a TV station. So now they still have Jimmy Olsen and Lois and Clark, and Perry White, but now they're all working for Morgan Edge, who's their boss. And there's also Steve Lombard, who's also part of the supporting cast now, and he's kind of a bully that's always picking on Clark Kent. So This is a continuity, like a status quo I'm not overly familiar with, but just so everyone knows, that's what's going on here. So at this point, Clark Kent and Lana Lang, I believe, are both on-air TV news anchors.
Right.
So basically, we see in the news that the Hulk. Superman sees with his X-ray vision and his telescope vision that the Hulk is outside, but he wants to clear the room so he can change into Superman. And so he fakes, he uses super ventriloquism to create a voice outside in the hallway saying, "Run, the Hulk is right outside the building." Then he stomps his foot on the ground, and obviously it's Superman. So it's so powerful that it rocks the whole building.
So great.
The people in the room are convinced that the Hulk is attacking. So they all run out of the newsroom, but Clark Kent runs the other way and turns into Superman.
Right. And then we get this great battle afterwards with Superman and Hulk. And it's really fun because I feel like they're probably the most even matched of like the Marvel DC, like just because they're kind of both unstoppable in their strength, and nothing, like bullets can't affect them, and so it's kind of cool to see them brawl and have at it.
It's great. Yeah. Like, I could stare at this art all day, but basically then Peter Parker comes into the scene, and he gets off a bus, and he's got to go find somewhere to change into Spider-Man.
Right.
And then Superman is the Hulk is buried under all this wreckage, and Superman is lifting up the wreckage to try to get to him. But then Hulk punches Superman and knocks him right into the air. He lands on the other side of the river. It's great.
So good.
The Hulk is and then Spider-Man comes in to kind of intervene in the fight, and then him and Hulk are kind of shouting at each other. Then we get this great classic scene on digital page 20 where Superman flies back, lands, and then he's like, "Step aside, son. This is a job for Superman." He walks over. The Hulk winds up and punches him, and Superman doesn't even move. So let's be clear for anyone out there. At this point in continuity, Superman was unimaginably stronger than the Hulk, which is, I try not to obsess so much over this sort of fanboy like fantasy, like who would win in a fight between Wolverine and, whatever. I don't even care about that stuff, but I got to admit, this is pretty cool. What do you think?
Yeah, it's really great. I love how he comes back and kind of, what he says to the Hulk is really cool too. And the fact that he was kind of like, yeah, I was just trying to stop you before, but now I don't want to be moved, so I will not be moved.
Yeah,
like that's great. He says, and when I'm ready and I don't want to be moved, no power on earth can move me. Mm-hmm. And he pretty much like takes a stand, and he's trying to tire out the Hulk.
Right.
As he's kind of just standing there taking these punches, he notices that there's this little like drone inside of the Hulk's ear, and he destroys it, and it takes away the buzzing that's been going on, that's been sending the Hulk on this rampage, and he's able to calm down the Hulk, and he turns back into Bruce Banner, which isn't done very often.
No, it's not. Definitely, you're right.
I mean,
It's really smart. Yeah.
yeah,
Like Jim Shooter knows what he's doing.
yeah. Even Spider-Man takes note of that. Like, whoa, holy cow, he did it. Soup's talked the Hulk into calming down enough so that he, turns back into Bruce Banner.
Right. It's
So,
great. I
yeah.
really like this. So then Spider-Man turns back into Peter Parker. Superman flies away, and Bruce Banner, is he taken into custody, or is they just let him go? Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's talking to the police, and we kind of cut away as Superman flies off. And then we get a little bit of like a backstory of the Parasite and what he's doing in the story.
Right.
So he crawls out of the ground, and he's weak. And he ends up siphoning off some of the power of Peter Parker, who's in the crowd.
And I love how I didn't really realize this about the Parasite, but he only sucks superpowered people's abilities, and so he's like, wait, suddenly I feel much stronger. Somehow my body's absorbing energy. Whoa, and then so that's where he realizes someone in that crowd must be far more human for my energy absorbing body to siphon away their strength from such a distance. I think it's so cool.
Yeah.
And we see these great images by John Buscema of Peter sort of like almost fainting, right? And being caught by Jimmy Olsen. Then Jimmy Olsen takes him for a coffee. And I wish we would have got a longer scene, more dialogue between them, but we kind of get just a quick shot of them sitting there. There's not really much to it. But it is nice to see them hanging out, Yeah. And the thing, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it was pretty interesting, and it's kind of like a nice character moment after all this fighting, and then like supervillains showing up and powers being siphoned, like being able to kind of breathe for a second and just see these two characters that have never met before meet and interact. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
I think one of the things about John Buscema that's so great is there's so much. There's not just a lot of detail and a lot of story in each panel, but there's so much in between. Like we see the shot of them sitting having coffee, and then the next shot, boom, they're outside,
Right.
And it's like he's moving through time so quickly, and I think that's one of the things that makes him so great. Like even when you go to the next page, Digital 25, it's like, Peter and Jimmy Olsen are at the door, and Steve Lombard's talking to the secretary. And then the next shot, they're standing right next to him. It's like he moves very quickly through space and time, and it's something you don't see nowadays. Like now, a lot of modern artists, they'll just have a static shot of someone talking, and then it cuts back, and it's the same shot.
Yeah, he really kind of like trims the fat of like all of the like storytelling, and allows you as the reader to kind of fill in the gaps. Like you see that they're having this conversation while sitting and having coffee, and then the conversation continues on the walk outside. Like you don't need to see them pay their bill, get up, walk out the door, and then start like walking down the street. You know all of that happens as they're chatting and getting to know each other and having this conversation, right? So
totally.
You're able to kind of fill in the gaps, and you're able to look at these just few panels and understand exactly what's going on and what they've just done.
Totally. It's great.
Yeah.
So then this is where Clark decides to take a leave of absence, right?
Right.
Which shocks Morgan Edge. Is it Morgan Edge? Yeah.
Yeah.
It must. Yeah, it's Mr. Edge, Morgan Edge. So he decides to take a leave of absence, so he takes off, and then he flies over to the Latvian embassy, and he goes to talk to Dr. Doom. Oh, so maybe originally Dr. Doom was here. I thought he was in Latveria, but I guess he was in his embassy. So he's here to talk to Dr. Doom, and we actually get some pretty freaking cool dialogue here.
Yeah.
And basically, Dr. Doom says to Superman, surely you understand, for philosophically we are much alike. You and I are the mightiest beings on this planet. I choose to exert my power to impose my will upon the world. You choose not to. And yet even that choice does indeed affect the lives of every man, woman, and child on earth, condemning them, in fact, to poverty, disease, famine, and to the hideous suffering they inflict upon one another. You cannot escape it, Superman. You dictate the fate of mankind one way or the other. And Superman says, I know. But what can I do? Seize power and try to remake the world into a utopia? That would put me into a class with men like Hitler and you. This is awesome.
It's like so great.
I don't think I've ever seen any other writer point that out, but it's true. He does really control the fate of humanity, and he chooses to act a certain way, and that affects it no matter what, right?
Yeah. No, it's really smart. It's really smart writing to have these two characters that are like both in separate universes, but like are complete opposites in what they are. Like
Right.
they're both extremely powerful characters, and they use their powers in totally opposite ways. And
Yes.
it's really smart to bring them together and then have this dialogue about that and how their actions kind of change the world for good or evil.
Right.
So really good. And then, this ends up being a trap for Superman, and Superman kind of figures that that's what's going on, and he does something so freaking cool. He rips up the lead of the ground and like rolls it, like he burritos up in this like
Right.
metal sheet, and he spins around so fast that it melts the lead around him into this metal like suit, like coating shell around Superman. So he's able to pick up the kryptonite, and throw it out the building into the sun.
Isn't that awesome?
And then after that, he just breaks out of the metal shell, and he's about to, finish off Doom, and he says, "You can't touch me. You're a man of the law, and you're on my soil, and I make the rules." So Superman is completely helpless because, he's in the embassy, and he's not allowed to hurt or harm Doom. So he just walks out. Like, it's
amazing.
Yeah.
It's like, this is people behaving logically, people behaving in character, and the writer using their characters in creative ways, right?
Yeah.
To create surprising situations. It's freaking awesome.
Yeah, like after Superman literally makes a shell out of metal, grabs kryptonite, throws it into the sun, he literally just walks away afterwards. And
Yes.
Doom, that's almost like Doom's superpower, is the fact that he's smart enough to figure out a way to stop him without doing anything physically, because he knows he's not a match physically for Superman. Right. So he defeats him in another way and wins this battle by literally doing nothing and standing there. And just having that much power to stop somebody like him without like moving a muscle is crazy.
Yep. It's great.
It definitely is a reason why he's one of the best supervillains ever, is because he's so smart, and he uses his power to outsmart and challenge the superheroes mentally. It's great.
So then we see that Parasite is hanging out with Dr. Doom. Are you familiar with Parasite at all?
A little bit. I know of him. Again, I don't think I've really read any comics with him, but I've definitely read about him.
Well, it's funny because they made him look really cool in the animated series in the 90s. But as you can see here, he looks completely different, and his costume's pretty lame. It just looks like underwear and like a weird stripe up the middle of his chest, So I'm actually surprised they used him in the story. Like, I didn't realize how important or prominent he was back then. Eh?
Right.
So anyway, yeah. So basically, then we just cut back to. So now, this is where Clark Kent basically gets a job at the Daily the Daily Bugle.
Right.
Which is kind of cool because, as we said earlier, like, this is not just a rock'em sock'em, excuse for like a fight scene between two different characters. They actually explore the differences between the two characters, right? And so they show. It's a great way to do fish out of water, right?
And it's really cool because we kind of get to see the other characters live each other's lives. And it definitely, you see Superman interact with J. Jonah Jameson, and you're assuming that he's going to be, snippy and mean and rude to Clark, just like he is with Peter. But he's like excited to see him and happy and kind of greets him. Even at one point, I think maybe it's not exactly right here. Oh, I think right after this, Clark is in one of the rooms changing back from Superman into his civilian clothes, and J. Jonah Jameson is just banging on the door. Blast it, Kent, open it, Earl! And he opens it up, and then Clark Kent just kind of like charms his way out of it.
Right,
It's so
right, right.
great. Like that would never ever work for Peter Parker, but it just kind of goes to show you how great Clark Kent is at like being human.
Right, right.
So
Yeah, completely different, right? Like it just shows how he would handle the situation differently. And then we also see this is kind of cool how Gloria is kind of interested in Clark, but
Right.
he disappears again. So then Superman's back on his he's back out doing his thing, preventing a train from hitting a bus, blah blah blah, and then he's kind of just going about his regular business. But
Right.
then we get a really cool scene where he flies to Latveria. And am I jumping ahead too fast?
No.
Oh, okay. So he flies ahead to Latveria, and then I just love Superman's my favorite character, and one of the reasons I love him so much is because the way people treat him with such respect. It's not like in Marvel where the X-Men are kind of outlaws and Spider-Man's always being hounded by the police. I love the fact that he flies to Latveria and he walks in, and it's like, holy Moses, get a load of this guy. Can I help you? I need some information, Sergeant. And it's just like he just walks in with so much authority,
Right.
and nobody. I don't know. It's like it's like he walks in like a king, and he just automatically commands everyone's attention. Then I love the fact that he goes in and he's like, I need some information, Sergeant. Officers from this precinct recently impounded some unusual weapons used in an attempted robbery. What can you tell me about that incident? Well, we received an anonymous tip. Two officers went to the First National on 56th, and he's like, interesting, might have a look at these weapons. And of course they let him. He just uses his x-ray vision and then draws on a pad and with a pencil and paper, just draws out what the evidence looks like. Isn't that crazy?
It's weird how maybe it's just because we've been reading Spider-Man so much, but it was kind of jarring to see this happen. Again, because I've been reading so many Spider-Man comics lately that yes. I'm just not used to like the heroes working with the police and kind of he himself is almost like a police officer in this. Like it.
Yes.
And I mean, even in like Superman comics, he's like this. So it's just kind of fun to see that juxtaposition of these two characters. Like no matter what Spider-Man does, he's still an outlaw. Like he can't really escape it, but somewhere out there is somebody who successfully has become a hero and like saves people on a day-to-day basis and has incorporated it into their lives and is able to work with authorities to kind of get these jobs done. It's definitely interesting. I think that these two characters were a perfect pairing to do a crossover between the two companies.
So Soups leaves a schematic drawings for the bomb squad, and he tells them to be careful with the guns because he's just like that, right?
Right.
And then then we realize that Dr. Doom has the Hulk captured in this one of those classic tube things that all superheroes get captured in, right? And then he also Parasite tries to get smart with him, so he uses his energy against them. Meanwhile, I love how we cut over to the Daily Bugle, and Peter is, of course, smitten with Lana Lang, but she won't give him the time of day because
the Daily Planet.
The Daily Planet, but Lana Lang won't give him the time of day because she just thinks he's too young for him.
Right.
I just think that's awesome. And in his head, she's like, great. What a time to fall apart. She must think I'm a world-class nerd. So no matter what, he's still Peter Parker. I love it.
Yeah, it's a really great.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course... Sorry, go ahead.
And then, of course, Lombard, too, is like picking on him and making fun of him. And like slaps a note onto his back as he's like pretending to console him.
Right.
So...
yes. What is it?
I struck out with Lana. Yeah, I struck out with Lana Lang. So it's just like, yeah, again, no matter where he is, he's just down on his luck and really can't catch a break. It's really funny, but it's so true to his character. I was gonna say he does get back at him real quick before he leaves. He changes into his Spidey costume and he webs up his chair a little bit, and he's now like kind of stuck to his chair, and it's a pretty funny moment.
Yep, classic. And now again, this story is I love this issue, but it's not perfect. There's a lot of what do you call these? Like just like side stories that kind of don't really contribute to the overall. Like we get this scene here where a guy's up on a roof in a shootout with a cop, and Spider-Man tries to intervene, but they turn on him, start shooting at him. It's a little bit. I mean, it's not a bad scene, but overall, it kind of amounts to filler. And there's a lot of little scenes like that in this issue.
Right.
I think
Yeah, I feel like even before with Superman going back and forth, like we almost had like a couple page montage where he was like dealing with Daily Bugle stuff and then running away and saving a train, and then he would come back, and then he went out again as Superman and stop something else, and then so I think we kind of get that here as well. And I don't know how important it is to the story, but it's still interesting to me because we get to see what the characters are doing, like when they're not in their natural habitat, I guess.
And then we also get to see Big John Buscema draw Superman for one of only 2 times, I think, in his entire career. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. He only did this, and he did one prestige format Superman story that ended up being his final assignment, and he died during the assignment.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy. Anyway, we'll talk about that another time. So then basically Spider-Man goes back to the same construction site from the beginning, and he discovers, a steel plate that he rips open. Of course, he goes down, and there's a weird Star Wars reference here where he says, maybe this is where they're filming the next Star Wars movie. Wonder if I'll run into Luke Warmwater or C3D2.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the gag is. Like, ha 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 ha. Just not very funny, I guess. No. So he goes into this like underground bunker, and sure enough, even though this is Spider-Man and Superman story, he runs into Wonder Woman. So we get to see John Buscema drawing Wonder Woman. Not the greatest sequence of art. It looks a little bit rushed by his standards, but it is cool to see her in the story,
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think it I don't think that she's important to the story, but I think both Wonder Woman and Hulk make it like really feel like it's an alternate universe where these two places are connected. And later on, right now, as they're talking to each other, Wonder Woman does get like blasted with a laser, and she gets taken and put into the tank next to Hulk. So, like, I don't know, just that imagery alone with the two of them like side by side in those tanks, and then Spider-Man and Superman working together to save them and stop Doom, like it makes it feel again connected and
more grand, and more grand, a grand scope.
Right,
Yep.
It's not just these two characters like talking to each other. You get a sense that the entire worlds are connected now. So again, while it wasn't important to the story, I still enjoyed it because it was more of like a exploring the world moment and not necessarily like important to the story. But I thought it was pretty fun, but it also didn't stand out as anything fantastic, this little sequence.
Right. So basically, so they capture Wonder Woman, and we get a flashback to Parasite's origin, which is kind of nice to see. Then Dr. Doom starts to explain his plan.
Right. I love this.
Can you explain his plan?
So he's put these like power plant like machines all over the world, and he wants to siphon out the all like fossil fuels and energy, and that way he controls all of the power in the entire world. And he explains this by opening up a little ring that he's wearing, and then it pulls out this micro miniature holographic projector built into my glove.
I love
it's
it.
so great.
This
like beam of light comes from his ring or from his gauntlet, and it opens up the world, and you see all of these points where he's installed these power plants that he will activate once all of Earth's fuel and resources are kind of depleted. So he'll own all the power and all the money because people will have to pay for it, right? So it's a pretty cool idea, and it also feels like almost like classic. Like it's like, that's a really cool Doctor Doom story. like
Totally.
I
Yes.
mean a plan, right? Where yeah, he wants to control all the power in the world. It's not enough that he has Latveria. He's got to go beyond that.
Well, it's also more logical than, I want to destroy the world. It makes
Right.
much more sense that no, you just want to make a lot of money. Like it's more logical,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So then, finally, so Superman figures out what's going on. Then he flies down, and I kind of like. I mean, the one thing I noticed somebody pointed out about this issue was that I don't think you see Superman smile once. So he is a little bit more stoic than usual. But
Right.
I mean, this is the only time in the 80s or 70s or 80s that he was written by Jim Shooter, because Jim Shooter did write Legion of Superheroes in the 60s, and I think he might have done a few Superman stories, but it is unusual to see him written by Jim Shooter. And you'll notice that when he's talking to Spider-Man there, he's like, basically Spider-Man explains what's going on, and Superman's like, of course I believe you. I had just about pieced the whole thing together from the evidence I'd gathered anyway. So what do? These guys are playing for keeps. Maybe we should get reinforcements like the army maybe. No, there isn't time. Then it's just us? No, Doom and the Parasite are too dangerous, Spider-Man. It's just me. This is a job for Superman. So he just leaves Spider-Man behind. I think I'll take care of this myself. But then, of course, Spider-Man decides to follow him anyway. So I don't think it's Superman is arrogant. It's just that he knows he's so much more powerful than everyone else that maybe he just doesn't want them to be in danger. Right?
It could also, too, be the fact that, like, Spider-Man in the Marvel comics, he's a big hero, but he doesn't seem very like big league yet. Like he's still a teenager. He's still going to school. Like he's still like that friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. I can't think of at this point if he's stopped any like really big events or like world-ending things. It's mostly like stuff going on in New York. So it would make sense that Superman would say, listen, this is bigger than you, like stay out of this because I don't want you to get hurt kind of thing, and I can handle this myself. So I feel like it's that, and the fact that he doesn't want Spider-Man to like interfere and endanger himself.
Well, and also like that, it's like, yes, at the time Spider-Man was Marvel's most popular character, but in the Marvel universe itself, he's not the most important character. That's what's an important distinction, I think. It's really cool, yeah. So then Spider-Man or Superman busts in and starts fighting the Parasite, and we get to see again John Buscema, showing Superman using his heat vision, his super breath, which I love talking about, his super breath. And then, of course, there's a giant robot in there that he gets to fight. And then Spidey comes in and is fighting the Parasite. And, of course, basically, again, now John Buscema is one of my favorite artists, but he does tend to sometimes rush his art. So some of these pages are not as good as others, but it's still all decent, yeah.
I think what's important with him is he's very good at layout. He's so good at telling a story through the panels, and you can absolutely understand everything that happens in every single one of his panels. From panel to panel, you know what's going on and the action and the direction of everything. So I really love him for that.
Yes, and just to remind everyone listening, John Buscema literally wrote the book on Marvel art. I mean, most of these, a lot of these techniques were innovated by Jack Kirby, but he's the one that sort of refined them a little bit, and he turned them into that book, How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, and that's really the template for every Marvel artist in at least the 70s and 80s, for sure. So this is the Marvel style, and he's one of the masters. So then we get this. So eventually, Superman gets defeated. How does he get defeated here? I can't even remember.
Kryptonite. I think Dr. Doom turns on like a kryptonite field that surrounds him.
This is so cool. Yes, he's how does he do it? Precisely, kryptonite that you cannot hurl away, kryptonite you cannot flee or shield yourself from, for it is infused into the fabric of your costume. I bet Jim Shooter was saving this idea for a rainy day. Like, what a cool idea.
Yeah, that's really great.
So then he's down and out, and then Spider-Man's down and out. And then what happens next?
So we have Spider-Man kind of chained up to this wall, and he can see that Superman is laying on this table in front of Hulk and Wonder Woman as they're, standing in these tubes, completely asleep, these like glass tubes. Spider-Man uses his webs and kind of pulls Superman as Parasite and Doctor Doom are kind of distracting each other. He's pulling him off of the bed to get him out of the kryptonite.
He's pulling. He's pulling no, it's not the costume. So Superman's covered head to toe with a light layer of webbing, and then Superman's pulling it off, and that's pulling the kryptonite out of his costume, right? Because it's sticky, I guess. Like, what a crazy idea! But anyway,
yeah.
The spoiler.
They escape, and Superman jumps at Doctor Doom and pulls off his gauntlet.
Right.
Which he uses to stop Parasite. That way Parasite doesn't drain him of his power, which is so smart. I really love that.
Right.
He punches him, and this panel of him being punched is so great. Like... You have
because Parasite is just a lifeless, limp body. It's
like it looks like
funny.
one of those like dummies that they would use for stunt work, right? Like
absolutely.
The limbs look like they're just not flailing, but like completely limp and loose as he's flying up into this machine after Superman just punched him. It's great.
I love it. Yeah, that's something his brother Sal Buscema used a lot, and I don't know if it was intentionally funny, but it looked hilarious.
Yeah. So as Doctor Doom is trying to get away, this machine is about to explode, and Spider-Man is trying to kind of like deactivate the bomb from the outside, while Superman flies on the inside and is holding this thing together as Spider-Man is like quickly deactivating it with his like precision tools. And I really think it's so great having like Superman's strength like holding this together, and then Spider-Man's wit like deactivating it and like shutting it down. It's a really great way to have the two characters interact and like work together at the end to solve a problem. I think that's super smart.
Oh, yeah. I totally agree. Because as we know, Peter Parker is, he's always been scientifically inclined, and it's good that they show that, right? So then, again, we get Jim Shooter's characterization of Superman, where Superman chases Doctor Doom down, but Doctor Doom makes his way to the Latvian embassy. And he's like, I made it here in my own sovereign territory. I cannot be touched. I am supreme. You would not dare violate international law. And it's just, and then, keep on believing that, Doom. Keep on trusting an imaginary line to protect you from me. And by everything held sacred, the next time, bah! And then, so it's just funny because in the way Jim Shooter writes Superman, he has beat him. And it's just a clever way, to show how smart Doom is.
Yeah.
So it's great.
Yeah, it's really great.
And then we cut back. And so then, the main story wraps up when we get a great shot of John Buscema drawing, Clark Kent, Jimmy Olsen, Perry White, and Lois Lane. It's just like I want to put that up on my wall. It's such a nice shot of them all sitting there. Yeah. And then just kind of wrapping up the story. Then Peter goes back to the Daily Bugle, and it's business as usual, right, with J. Jonah Jameson.
Right.
And we kind of wrap up with a classic, speaking of generosity, J. I got used to being paid better while I was at the planet. How about a raise? A raise? A raise? Why, you ungrateful whelp. There's no place like home. Wah, wah, wah. The end,
it's
right?
really great.
Classic.
Yeah.
So that wraps it up. So
I would definitely recommend this one.
Yes, so would I. Have you? No, I can't remember if you said so, but have you read any of the other intercompany crossovers from this time?
No, I haven't.
Because they're very hit and miss. There's only a few of them. There's Superman and Spider-Man, Batman and the Hulk,
right?
Superman and Spider-Man again, which is this one, and then there's Teen Titans and the X-Men, and they're all decent, but they all suffer from some of the same problems this one did, in that they're a little bit overlong, they're a little bit convoluted. But this one, honestly, based on memory, it's probably my favorite one.
Right.
So yeah, I would definitely recommend this.
Yeah. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I definitely want to check out some of these crossovers now because this was fun.
And the thing is for those who don't know, I have an embarrassingly, great amount of comic books, like in the neighborhood of 10,000, and I've been whittling it down and selling them, getting rid of them. But one thing I will never do is I'll never get rid of my treasury size comics, because you're pretty much never going to see those comics reprinted in that format again, ever, So if you can find these, I'm not talking about speculation or investment. I'm talking about if you're a comic book fan and you like, seeing comic books in their actual page size, because I'm not sure if you know this, but you know that when John Buscema and these artists, when they draw comics, they're not the page format. Yeah, they're much larger. They're more. I think they're about the size of a Treasury Edition. So if you want to see comics in that size, pick up Treasuries, because not only are there original stories like this one, they also reprint a lot of classic comics. So there's chances to see John Romita and Jack Kirby and Kurt Swan really cool. all in this giant format. Yeah, so definitely check those out. So that wraps up our Treasury Edition episode of Here Comes the Spider-Cast. Unfortunately, Treasury Editions were going out of style by 1980, and so those are the only two we'll be covering, but we will be doing other episodes covering Spider-Man guest appearances and other comics throughout the decade. So yeah, definitely look forward to that. So you can take it from here, Josh.
Yeah. We want to hear from you guys. We want to know what you guys think about the podcast and the episodes, or the comics that we're talking about in the episodes. So you can find us over at Facebook, YouTube, and anywhere you can find podcasts like Spotify and Apple Podcast at The Comic Book Syndicate. And if you want to follow us and talk to us on Twitter, you can at Comic Syndicate. We'd love to hear from you guys. We want to know what you guys think about the podcast, and we want to keep that conversation going.
That's right. So this has been a special episode of the show, but next week we'll be back to our regular coverage of the monthly issues of all Spidey comics in the 80s. So until next Monday, this has been Here Comes the Spider-Cast.